Our world is changing really fast, and there are a lot of new ideas coming up and a lot of startups that are trying to solve the common challenges and make our world better. Today, we are going to speak about a very important topic. How do we make these startups successful? And that's why we are going to look at the top 5 reasons why they fail. And in order to discuss this topic, I've invited Irina Kremlova, who is working at the Startup Accelerator. She is a mentor of different startups, and she is also developing educational programs for them to succeed. I'm Elena Doms, and this is the Interesting Times podcast powered by Think Tank Burgundia. Irina, welcome. It's great to have you here at the Interesting Times podcast today.
Hi, Elena. Nice to see you too today, and thank you for inviting me.
I'm very excited to share your story with our listeners. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So, my name is Irina, and I have more than 12 years corporate experience in finance, product management, sales, and marketing in fast-moving consumer goods company. But since last year, I felt the need to go towards some technological areas where my inspiration lays, and I joined a entrepreneurial community called Mesto in October, or even earlier, a little bit earlier last year. But since October, I was really largely involved in the group creating Mesto University, which is the type of digital university for Russian speaking entrepreneurs, which is aiming to support them, to teach them, and to provide probably some resources, educational resources, people resources, and so on, to support their projects and businesses.
Well, entrepreneurs, they're usually quite hands-on people. And we see a lot that they are learning by doing. So what is it that they can learn at Mesta University? And why is it important?
Well, we anticipated several tracks, in fact, but largely we are focusing on supporting the entrepreneurs from idea until the roadmap. Because actually, this is a very difficult period when where a lot of people lose their track because they perhaps have some ideas, but they don't know how to bring these ideas to life. What are the next steps? And some of those who can actually bring those ideas to the next step to MVP or minimal viable product, they often fail afterwards. And we try to do everything we can to avoid those failures and to increase the succeed rates of the startups.
And what's the failure rate of startups? Do you have an estimation?
This is a good question because it is estimated differently across different countries. And I read some study in Europe which estimated that actually 10 out of 10 startups on average fail.
10
Very
out of 10?
depressive number, totally.
Do any of them succeed?
They do. In fact, they say that 10 out of 10 fail if we assume that they don't change their ideas from the beginning. But those who do elaborate, do use design thinking or other technologies to a little bit develop and deviate and to check their ideas, they actually survive much better. And then the successful rate is 3 out of 10 can be successful in the end. So 7 out of 10 they fail still. So you can imagine that startup business is a really risky business. So you need to have some strengths to go into this.
Sounds that it's only for the brave people to open a startup.
That's totally true. In fact, the bravery here is about making the mistakes. It's what a lot of corporations lack nowadays. When we feel that any mistake, any failure can cost us, I don't know, the revenues, the jobs, the people, and many other things. And startups, they're actually adventurous people. They're discoverers of the world. So they're not afraid to go there in the unknown and to try new things, and even they fail, well, it's fine. It's an experience. So they will go to another thing and test something else.
So for all the brave people out there who are thinking to open something and start something, or who are already on that journey, can you share the reasons why startups fail so that they fix it and they go further and they make their success rate better?
Sure. I actually read recently the article from the CB Insights, which is the business analytics firm, and they did an amazing study. They took 101 startups from Silicon Valley, well, the best place in the world probably for the starts for the startups. So, and they collected all the reasons of the 101 startups failures, and then they organized them together and created 20 top reasons of why startups fail. And maybe it's worth of talking about the first five, the top five of them. So the first one is actually no market need, which sounds obvious. Why would you create something which nobody needs? Sounds obvious, but it is not. A lot of people fail there. So
Really?
there are, yeah, truly, because like people, for instance, there were one startup I remember, they were creating kind of very efficient and I don't know, smart doctor office, but the startup failed, and the owner, he wrote, well, yeah, we didn't think about it, but I mean, the doctors, they care about the health of their clients and not how comfortable their office is, which sounds obvious when we say it now, but I mean, in all those ideas, it's not always so obvious. And what we also try to explain to our students in Mester University is that it's very important to make the customer proposition mapping in the very beginning. There are many frameworks for this. We use customer proposition canvas, but the idea behind is very simple, in fact. You need to understand your audience. You need to understand what is it, the customer actually, what is the client of your startup, and then map very clearly the pains and the gains. To give you example, I need to go, for instance, to the shop every day, right? And
Mhm.
every day I carry a lot of bags and I have a lot of frustration from it. I'm really angry and I can't deal with this. So this is my pain. It's really heavy bags and I need to go far away. And yeah, I don't know what to do. So probably the car as a product can solve this problem. It can solve my pain, right? At the same
Mhm.
time, well, I really like the sea, and I wish I can go to the sea every weekend, but it's too far away, right? So maybe I can buy a car, and it will be some gain for me. So yeah, it's not something super necessary for to go to the seaside every weekend, but well, I will be so much pleased about this. So when you map all the gains and pains which people search for, then it will be probably a good market fit for your product. But you really need to be very critical and very accurate about that, because sometimes people tend to kind of goal seek. So they first they think about the product, but then they think, yeah, for sure they will need it, it will cover that pain, but it's not true. So yeah, no market need is definitely the first problem. And
Mhm.
two
And
other
sorry, and
problems.
how do you check this market needs? So you come up with an idea, you think it's gonna solve everybody's pains. How do you check that it's really necessary? You just go out there and ask people? What do you do?
Well, there are many different techniques. So first of all, of course, you just can analyze all the data you can afford yourself from internet, from outside, and so on. You can do the customer research. So you can do some questionnaire, or you can do some, yeah, kind of websites with some sample questions, giving some maybe benefit of answering them. There are many techniques, but also what works best as a second step anyway is the in-depth interviews, when actually you go to clients and based, for instance, on the same questionnaires, you ask them a little bit to talk about them. Because in fact, what is written on the paper is not always what people think. And when you ask them a lot of different questions, especially positions, especially organized, then you can actually understand much better the real pain of the people, right? And when you
Mhm.
catch this pain, this is when you can work on it. And by the way, there was a very interesting kind of masterclass or interview with one of the venture capitalists from Silicon Valley recently, and he mentioned that, yeah, if you invent something, then you talk about the science. But when you are thinking how to use something existing, some technology, but for the new way of new kind of area of life, which will make the life of people better in that area,
Mm-hmm.
this is what startups are doing actually, right? So it's not
Mm-hmm.
always about inventing. You don't need to become an Einstein, but it's about just, connecting the dots, connecting the two
Mm-hmm.
pieces of puzzle. And when it creates a lot of synergy, a lot of pain relievers or gain creators for people.
So it's making that synergy between the science and how people can use the latest innovations and inventions.
Exactly, exactly. I mean, like if you think about Uber, right? Uber
Mm-hmm.
disrupted the market. I mean, they didn't invent the car, they didn't invent the driver, but they found that, well, why do you need to own the car to drive somewhere, or why do you need to take a taxi in this way to call it? Maybe you can optimize it, and I mean, you can name it, right? Everybody knows
Yeah.
Uber, but basically connecting these dots, this is what created the synergy and the disruption of the market.
Okay, cool. So let's go then to the reason number two. What is it?
Well, the reason number two, and in fact, there is also reason number five, they're kind of related and they're related to finance. And it's an interesting topic because I was talking also with one of the leaders of Growth Mentor, the platform which is supporting well, the people and entrepreneurs as well in mentorship. And basically they mentioned that one of the highest demand now in the mentoring is all about growth marketing, right? So
Mm-hmm.
how to grow the business, how to grow the sales, and so on. And very little demand is there for finance. On the opposite, on the contrary, you can see that 2 out of 5 issues which is explaining why startups fail, they are linked to finance. And one issue is when they run out of cash. Second one is their cost issues, when they don't really manage their prices and cost correctly. So let's talk a little bit more about this perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
What does it mean, run out of cash? Well, to operate, everybody needs money, right? Every startup, every company. So typically, startups, they bring some investments from themselves sometimes, mostly from people outside, from investors, from family, from whoever, right? From the banks. But then normally you take a particular amount of cash, which is based on your financial model, where you predict certain incomes and costs, right? And then you assume how much money do you actually need to lend, or to ask from investors to exchange afterwards for the part of the company. And very often, teams do not pay enough attention to business models. They don't take into consideration all the variables, all the drivers, and then they ask some amount of money. But wait a second, in a couple of months, there are no money anymore, and they all spent because nothing was a lot of costs were not foreseen. And then they go again for the money, and then they again spend it, and then they again come. And then, I mean, you can imagine if somebody will come to you and ask, Lena, for a great business, give me 1,000 euro. And then in 2 months they ask the same, in 3 months they ask the same. Probably you will stop trusting them at some point, right?
Yeah.
So it's also about reliability.
So
It's very
how do you
important to.
fix that? You need to have from the beginning the people that know how to estimate the costs. I mean, it's also a new and risky business. You don't know how much certain things might turn out to be. How do you do it? You just hire competent people, or what are the steps that they can take?
Indeed. So it's either, well, first of all, you can, of course, hire the financial person who at least can imagine how financial model is working. I mean, you're absolutely right that startup is an unknown business. You can't predict everything to the penny. That's absolutely true. But at the same time, it doesn't remove the fact that you can build the correct model. You can put some
Mm-hmm.
assumptions, and you can be very flexible in adapting those assumptions when you go. But some things are kind of, yeah, pretty stable. For instance, like, I don't know, salaries or fixed costs that typically
Okay.
not varied by hundreds of thousands euro, and normally we are talking about quite big money when they ask from the investors, right? So basically, it's all about either hiring the right people to do the financial modeling, or hiring a good mentor who can teach you. And it's always better
Yeah.
because you are the owner, you are the founder. So of course you want to know exactly where your business is going, and maybe the mentor can help you just to, to frame your thoughts in the right direction. And then if you have the proper model, you have a better chances. Again, it's not a bulletproof solution, but you have better chances to predict your financials better, and you can be more predictable towards investors, and it means you can be more trusted, right?
Yeah.
And another point was about pricing and cost issues.
Mm-hmm.
And here it's also about being smart in your spendings. In corporate world, we often call it ZBB, or zero-based budgeting. It's basically when you treat the money you spend for the company or for startup here as your own. Would you rather choose a business class to go from Brussels to Madrid, or would you rather use economy class if you go by yourself for your vacation, right?
Well, it
Of course,
depends
for
on the
everybody,
person.
that's true, that's true. But I mean, indeed, it depends on your revenues. But when you compare it, you make always for yourself a smart choice. You need to make the same smart choice for your company. It
Mm-hmm.
all depends on your revenues, your expectations, and your cost. And when you treat this money as your own, as taken from your private pocket, then probably your cost structure is better. But again, you need to refer to financial modeling, looking in the perspective, comparing the things. And if you see that you cannot afford yourself or your company this cost, you should probably get rid of them.
Okay, makes sense. Good. So the reason number two and the reason number five are related to finances. What are the mysterious reasons number three and four?
Number three, we actually touched it a little bit. It's about having not the right team. So
Hmm.
I think all the companies are talking now about people, that people are key, people are drivers. Our main thing in the company is people. And it's true. It's true for everyone, but it's exceptionally true for startups. Because imagine when there is a company of 100 people, if you hire one person, which maybe is not the best fit, well, I don't think it will be so much impactful for the organization. But if it
Indeed.
is a team of three or five people, and one person is completely cultural or like, let's say, cultural unfit, or he's not an expert in what he was, let's say, intended to do in this startup, well, then there is a problem and the risk is much higher. And this is what the startups reported, actually. So they didn't have the founders which were aligned together about the vision of the company, or they were not maybe so capable of doing certain things, but they maybe didn't want to accept it, or learn, or they were not taking the advice. Many reasons, but basically it all ended up in one phrase: it was not the right team.
I mean, I can understand startups often start without any money, right? Or very limited capital. And you find a group of friends that know each other, that somehow can relate to the idea. And sometimes not everybody has the same passion for the same idea. And since you are limited in resources, you cannot go out there immediately and look for people that are experts or that would find that idea fascinating, because you can't pay money. So I can see why that would be a reason why they don't succeed. And I only can wish to all the startups to have a wonderful and great team from the beginning.
That's true. And the last reason which I wanted to talk today about, it's a very simple one as well, is get out competed. It's about competition. Well, you know, some startups which come to our university, and when we ask them, so who are your competition? Did you analyze your competition in the market? And they tell to us, no, but we don't have competition. Our idea is so great that, I mean, it's the unicorn of the ideas. Like we just developed it now, and nobody else thought about this. Typically, there are two reasons for saying that. First, the person did very bad job in analyzing the competition, right? And second one, well, the product is not needed. There is no demand, and that's why there is no competition. So about second, I think everything is clear there. But with
Mhm.
the first one is an interesting topic by itself, because a lot of people think, oh, I will create a car. And I mean, it's not a very big startup to create a car, okay, but I will make a very stupid example. uh, I will make a car, and then you say, well, my competition is another car provider, right? And for instance, I do the Ford, and I have, I don't know, BMW is my competition, and Mercedes is my competition. Great, I put all the competitors on the map. But it's not true, because if you think about our first point of discussion, market need, right? Why actually do I need a car? In fact, the answer is very simple. To move from the point A to the point B.
Yeah, I
How can
mean
I do
to
it?
carry the bags from the shop and go to the seaside every weekend, like you said at the beginning, right?
Absolutely, that's my life. So, so
I hope
to
you have
go
an
from
electric car.
yes, Helena, sustainability. I wish. So to move from the point A to point B, you can actually use different means, right? You can walk, you can take a bicycle, you can take the scooter, you can take a car, you can take maybe a plane. It depends on the way the point A and point B situated, but nevertheless, you can take
Or
a
you can
train.
take
And I
or
mean,
you can take Uber as well.
absolutely. You can take many means of transport. So now when I go back and I think, oh, I produce the car, who is my competitor? Well, all of them, they solve the same issue of the client, right? To get from the point A to the point B. And if you think about this angle, then of course new ideas come to your mind. How can you market it better for people? Why is my car is better than the plane, for instance? And then different marketing communication is arriving from here. Different perhaps features are arriving from here, and then you can spin it off from this point.
Yeah,
So
makes
well,
total
get out
sense.
competed. It's a very interesting thing. It actually gained 19% of the rate of startup fails because of the competition. But let me also mention one more thing about the same topic. One thing is about mapping the right competition, and here we talked about this. But another point is being fast. The speed to market is extremely important, because
Mm.
the markets are changing very fast. Consumer are getting bored very fast. So the world is fast around us, let's face it, right? It's not comparable with 50 or 100 years ago. So if you have an idea, you just don't have the opportunity to wait several years until you make it true, because somebody else will do, so the words are out there. And as I said, it's science which is about innovation. The startups are about using the existing technologies. So what are the chances that somebody else will get to the same idea you have, basically?
Exactly. And with the amount of people in the world nowadays, which keeps growing, there are more and more chances that people have similar ideas. So speed to market is indeed
Absolutely.
extremely important. I think we are, as consumers, are also quite spoiled. I mean, if we order something online, we expect it to arrive at least the next day. Not like it used to be before, where you could wait for weeks for your package to arrive. So indeed, that creates a lot of demand on the startup side as well to fail fast, if I can put it that way.
That's true.
So if the startups they use the recommendations and look very carefully at these 5 reasons, they are going to have a much higher chance to succeed then.
That's true. And basically, what is the general suggestion to all the startups is, when they have the idea, right, to go through more or less standard frameworks. Nowadays, there are many of them. By the way, you shouldn't stick to one particular one, because typically, yeah, it can be a little bit product specific, and you need maybe to
Mm-hmm.
find even your own framework. But there are some building parts which you definitely need to look at, like to make the customer development analysis, so CusDev, like we call it, which is basically to analyze if there is, what are the pains and gains of the customer. You need to look at the competition, what is happening there, who are your competitors. You need to look at your business model and financial model, and so on and so on. And then you need to be quite fast to try. How can you try? You need to do the MVP, which I mentioned before, minimal
Mm-hmm.
viable product, which is not necessarily like the prototype, but it's more like something very simple, which can cover the pain of your client, right? So very, very
Mm-hmm.
simple thing. And if you will check on this MVP that indeed there is this pain, I was not mistaken, and I can fulfill this pain with this product, then maybe you can go to the next step and actually do the well, route of investments, of course, to support your production, or I don't know what is the product particularly, but basically to start producing your product properly. But you shouldn't be afraid um, to do this first MVP, as we call it in Russian, on the knee. When you do it almost, manually, you shouldn't be afraid of that, because you need to check your hypothesis as soon as possible and
Mm-hmm.
then move to the scaling up the business.
Okay, so for startups, it's really important to take care and foresee all the sides of the business and use models like business model canvas. But also, it's important to move really fast through the process so that they can identify if they can stick with this idea or they should adapt it and change. Okay, so we've talked about the main reasons why startups fail and what they should do. Now, for the people who want to start up something, what's the difference between a startup and starting your own business?
That's a good question. We actually faced this challenge when we were recruiting our mentors and mentee for the kind of startup track, and we saw that this difference is not very well understood sometimes. So, for instance, if you want to open a hair salon, right, or
Mhm.
you want to open the shop which will sell dresses, are you a startupper or not? Well, you are not, because the startup by definition is the company which is growing more than, let's say, 100% every year. So it's very scalable. It's something which is growing, growing, and growing big until
Mhm.
and beyond, of course, when they become unicorns, is the companies with the valuation over $1 billion.
Mhm.
So it's very, very scalable business. And of course, you probably can scale the hair salon, but I don't think you can really scale it very much, right? So in this case, it will be probably just a business. It's your own business. You are an entrepreneur, but it is not a startup.
Okay, that's very interesting. So to create a really startup, you need to think of the idea that is very much scalable and can grow really fast and become, if possible, global.
Absolutely.
And my last question, but I'm very curious. What are your favorite startups? Who are you really following closely?
Well, I was supporting the mobile app startup in the accelerator, which is called Sketch, and they
Hmm.
developing the mobile app to select the games, actually the mobile games, faster and better. And I mean, even though I'm not a big gamer, but actually I appreciated the fact that the industry is large, and I mean, a lot of people now use their times at home, or maybe when they are commuting to work and playing some games. And actually it's an interesting idea to help people. It's kind of like a Tinder for the for the games, when they
Okay.
swipe left, swipe right, and they select the start, they select the game which they really like. So probably it's my favorite now, because I'm still supporting them sometimes, so for sure.
Okay, sounds really exciting. I'm going to check them out. Well, thank you very much. It was a pleasure to speak with you today. I definitely learned a lot about startups. And I can only wish to everyone out there who is now coming up with great idea or working on implementing it to be very successful. And in case they need the startup advice, they should know that they can come to Irina and she will help them.
Thank you, Elena, and have a great day.
You too.